Is it possible to learn Greek in 4 weeks? What about 2 weeks? What about just any period of time if you're working full-time and you've got a family? Is it possible to learn Greek? Well, it is, and in fact, I have friends who learnt Greek in just 2 weeks at seminary over the summer break, just before semester started. They'd take a 2-week boot camp, and it was every day for 2 weeks, and they'd learn the basics of biblical Greek. Go them, right? But this is a really difficult way to learn Greek. It isn't unheard of, it's not unusual. In fact, there is, S.M. Bohr has actually written this Greek grammar, which is designed to help students learn Greek in just 5 weeks. And so I'll leave a link to this in the description below, but you know, and I've done a review of this as well. If you want to look that up, I'll leave that in the description as well. But the point here is it possible to learn Greek in that kind of time frame? And if so, what should you expect? So let's talk about that very briefly. First of all, let's talk about what it would take. The first thing to know is that this is going to be a very intense program of learning. Normally, you're going to do this kind of thing in a classroom, and it's going to be an intensive classroom. So normally when you go to seminary and you do classes, you're going to meet for Greek, for instance, you probably meet twice a week for maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 or 4 even, per lesson. In those hours, you're going to have some lectures, you're going to be interacting with the professor, and he's going to be talking through those things. But think of this way. If you're going to do this in 2 weeks or even 5 weeks, you're probably going to be spending at least 4 hours every day in lectures. And in those lectures, you're going to be just getting this huge brain dump of information that you're just going to have to kind of take in as you go. Now, the nice thing about that is that you have the professor there and you can ask him lots of questions as you go through this to ensure that you've understood it. And if you've got a grammar, something like this, that's designed to help you as you go through that program, well, it may actually be quite doable. You might be able to actually work with the material in the grammar, which gives you a written copy, if you like, some notes to take home, so to speak, and then some exercises you can do in the latter half of the day, because that's pretty much what you're going to be doing. The first half of the day is probably going to be spent in lectures. The second half of the day is probably going to be spent with you working through a whole bunch of exercises to try and internalize all of the things that were talked about in the morning lectures. So that's the first thing. This is going to be very classroom intensive. The other thing is about this is, like I just mentioned, it's going to take a lot of time per day. Normally, historically, when we've taught Greek, I've normally taught people you want to put aside about an hour a day. And we're actually working on our own beginning Greek course, which should reduce that a little further yet. But the idea is that you want to spend a little bit of time every day learning a little bit of Greek. Now, if you're doing something like this, you need to know that you're going to be pretty much full-time learning Greek. It's going to be really intense, and you're going to have to set aside a good chunk of time. Probably, like I said, 4 hours for your lectures and then another 3 to 4 hours for your exercises. Now, of course, it's going to be different for everybody because everybody learns at different speeds, and it depends what you've already done as well. If you've already learned Greek and you're refreshing it, it's probably not going to take quite that long. But nonetheless, bear in mind, this is a very time-intensive task as well. You're going to spend a lot of time per day doing this. Not only will you need a lot of time, but you're going to need some really good exercises, which is why I think S.M. Bohr ended up creating this grammar, because if you're going to teach Greek in 5 weeks, you're going to need to provide students with something, and you really need to give them at least some notes they can take away so that they've got something to refer to when you, the professor, are not there. You are going to want to get some very carefully prepared exercises that are going to help you to internalize that information. And I would argue that this is actually an area where many grammars are quite weak. Some grammars, for instance, beginning with New Testament Greek, will give to you a series of things you need to do at the end of each chapter. But other grammars, such as this one, and say Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek and a number of others, don't actually give you any exercises at all. For that, you'll need to buy the workbook. And even if you buy the workbook, often all you're getting is a bunch of translation exercises. And I would argue that for an intensive course like this, that's just not going to be enough. In fact, I would go further and say that for learning Greek generally, translation exercises are simply not enough. You really need to be doing, there's actually 4 steps, and we have a 4-step framework that we use, and you can check that out at bma.to/4 steps. But that's really going to be what you're going to need to go through on a daily basis to internalize the information in every lesson that you're going to be going through. And if you don't have those clearly delineated exercises, it's going to be really hard to learn Greek. How do you learn paradigms? How do you learn how to pass if you don't do that work? There are some other things that come out of these really short and intensive courses as well. One of them is that because there's so much to take in on a daily basis, it's actually really hard to put all that into your memory and keep it there, even over a short-term period. Yes, there's a degree of building on the knowledge on a day-by-day basis, and that certainly helps. But there are so many little things in Greek that you tend to forget, even if you're doing it slowly, that make this really challenging to remember. This means then that typically you're going to find that you're going to forget things that you learnt the day before on the day after. Because while you might learn on day one the alphabet and diphthongs and things like that, you're probably going to forget other things that you might have learned on that day one as well. Not only that, but as time goes on, this memory loss actually compounds, so that by the time you finish beginning Greek, yeah, you can do some basic translation, and yeah, you can look through the history of beginning Greek in the beginning Greek course, and you can see, yeah, we did this and we did that, and I basically remember that. But you know, if someone asks you to reproduce that, to explain it to them, you're probably not going to be able to do that. And then there's this whole thing of moving things from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. It's not that easy to do in a period of 2 or even 5 weeks. And so intensive courses can be quite challenging in that respect. It actually is going to make it much more difficult for you to retain your knowledge of the language, which means unless you've got a really clear path out the other side of this, you're probably not going to remember what you've learnt in that intensive period over the next 2, 5, 10 years or months or whatever it is. And then finally, even if you do get through an intensive beginning Greek course, it's only going to provide you with the basic knowledge. And this is one of the things, again, that is so challenging about beginning Greek, is that it gives you the basics, right? That's why Mounce's grammar is called the basics of biblical Greek. It's just the beginning point. It's just the basic things you need to know to be able to do some very basic translation. It's not enough to be an expert in Greek. It's not enough to be able to read your New Testament in Greek. And so you really need to be able to go beyond that. And if you don't have that, even if you spend that 2-week period really intensively looking at the course material and understanding it, and you do everything you can, you're still not going to have a good path beyond that. And if you do, it's probably going to be seminary and exegesis, which is still not going to give you those reading skills. So it's very challenging, I think, to learn Greek in this intensive period of time. And I think this also adds to the challenge of learning Greek if you are working full-time and you've got a family as well, is that you need to be working on this every single day. And it needs to be something that you build into your daily routines, because that's the only way to move this material from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, and then start to use that knowledge as you go on a day-by-day basis. So this is actually a really challenging problem to solve. And I'm not sure that learning Greek in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or even 5 weeks is a particularly helpful long-term strategy. Sure, it might get you through some basic requirements to get into seminary or something like that, but I think you should expect there's going to be some real challenges down the track with your retention of it. And that's where you need a really good plan. Now, if you want to know more about the plan that we put together, which gives you everything you need to go from zero all the way through to mastery, download our roadmap to mastery at bma.to/roadmap. We give you there an overview of what it's going to take, not only through beginning Greek, but beyond beginning Greek as well. And we'd love to be able to support you and help you as you learn to read the New Testament in the original language and study it in depth as well. The best way we've found to learn biblical Greek is just to take small, consistent steps on a day-by-day basis toward mastery. Not toward just learning beginning Greek, but toward knowing the entire Bible in the original language, and then just keep working on that bit by bit, day by day. Small, consistent steps, regular and manageable pieces of work on a daily basis is going to be the key difference between learning something and knowing something. I think that's the key difference. So if this has been helpful, hit the like button. That really helps this video be found by others. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And until next time, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. I look forward to serving you in the next video.